Good morning,
Good afternoon,
good evening,
wherever you are.
yeah, wherever you are, including if you're feeling a little out of sorts today, or if you're
People
feeling
are
really,
allowed to feel out of sorts.
yeah,
Could they still be enlightened?
yes, if they're kind to themselves about it. Because
Ah.
any of you ever get the flu, a cold, or COVID, one of those things, and you feel kind of crappy and
Mm,
creepy and like,
mm.
I wish this was over. Well, it's running through your system and it will end. And if you're kind to yourself about the experience can be rather delicious rather than hating every step of the way.
Yep. Well, it's kind of like life.
That wasn't where I expected to start, but life just shows up where it does.
That's true.
Today's episode is on the theme of
Listening.
and love.
And by the way,
We do finish each other's sentences. I'm Ariel,
I'm Shia.
collectively the Canes, and we tend to think similarly because we really listen. We listen with our eyes when we're looking at each other.
Well, it requires a willingness to be interdependent. If you're trying to prove your independence from your partner, if you're looking to find fault with them so you feel superior, or at least don't feel inferior, then there's very little chance that you can have a lasting, loving relationship because eventually it will deteriorate into a disagreement fight, and that will deteriorate into a larger fight. And then pretty soon, every time we think of each other, it's a fight. And that's normal for most people.
But if you go back to the very beginning of you connecting with another person, if you're not being kind to yourself, you will not be kind to them. And listening is this incredible tool that pulls you into the moment.
But it pulls you out of the mindset of complaint, of disagreeing, of finding fault, which is the mindset of humanity for the most part.
Well, somehow we've been conned by our culture, our minds that are forward thinking and backward reflecting to not be content, to complain. So that as if complaining will catapult us into action
Well,
that's
well,
meaningful.
well, as if complaining changes the current moment, and it doesn't.
Well, it does.
It does, because then you're miserable in the current moment, but it doesn't change the circumstance. Uh, if circumstances determine your sense of well-being, you don't stand a chance because the circumstances rarely, if ever, line up exactly as you'd like.
However, if you meet the circumstances as they are, it can be explosively awesome. Like when we're recording this here today, it is rainy and foggy and it's glorious, but it's not if I'm wishing for sun, if I'm wishing for it to be different. So let's meet ourselves where we are today and listen to each other, not to do anything with it. Wrote,
Oh, I like that, not to do anything with it. You don't need to take notes here
mm-mm,
because if you truly listen, that is, hear what's being said without filtering it to what you already believe to be true. Because if we say something that does not appear to be true to your beliefs, you will disregard it out of hand. And so the possibility will never exist for you to discover magnificence in this moment if you are committed to what you already know as though that's it, as though that is correct, right, perfect, the way things are. Because he's got to be willing, at least willing, for a possibility that's outside what you already know. And here's the problem We think we know everything. I mean, we know everything we know, and we know everything we know we don't know. And then there's this universe that is completely outside our knowing. And what if there are possibilities that exist simultaneously to what you believe to be true that could categorically transform the quality of your experience of living if you only knew that possibility existed?
I'll give you an example. I don't know if you are already a subscriber to our Living Made Easy on demand subscription. It's a year-long subscription, and each week subscribers get a video of us having a conversation with someone. And there are also blogs we put out independently on that particular format. You may already be receiving our newsletter and blogs. We wrote a blog for that particular format called Disengaged. And as you may know, if you've been following our podcast for a while, Shai and I fly fish. And back when we got COVID, I was so sick that I could not really do anything but be awake and sleep and occasionally eat soup or have tea. But it was just a period of time where I was not really willing or able to read, even just
The word incapacitated.
I was
is a good word.
incapacitated. I was rather relaxed into just being ill. And there came a point where Shai nestled into bed with me because he was recovering. He was a little bit ahead of me. And he was watching videos about spey casting. And spey casting is the type of casting you do with a two-handed fly rod. And I am really excellent at a couple of casts, but there was one that for years had been elusive to me called the single spey. Once you learn it, it is particularly easy and effective, but it has to do with timing, and it had never really worked for me. I had wrestled with it. I'd been embarrassed about it. It didn't work. And I sat there and watched videos of different experts doing this type of cast, explaining this type of cast. And I was ill enough that I wasn't saying, oh, I have to try that. Or, oh, yes, let me remember that. Or, oh, that's a really good idea. I didn't know that before. It was really a mouth agape, laying there, and from time to time, just rolling over and going back to sleep. When I recovered enough to be able to have about 15 minutes of ability to be active, we went down to the river. It was summer. It was warm. We waded in barefoot. I got out my fly rod, and I was instantaneously an expert at executing that cast. I did not have to make lists, talk to myself, promise, do anything forward thinking. It is entirely possible today. You can just relax and listen and suddenly be an expert at something that has to do with being you that you didn't even know existed.
I like that. I like that. I was going to talk about something else, but I don't even know that it's still appropriate.
Just go for it.
Okay. So Ariel and I were on a trip down to North Carolina a few weeks ago. We had a fishing trip, and we were walking along this road, and we saw a woman who was sitting in a like a
minivan.
Was it a minivan? Yeah,
whatever
okay,
it was.
minivan, and she had a star, like the star on the Dallas Cowboys star. If you don't know, that's a football team in America.
We didn't actually recognize it at first. We just thought it was a star. And then when she said, oh, yes, I'm a fan of the football team, then we recognized that's what it was.
And so she asked us what we did, and we said we led seminars. And she said, first thing she said was, is it Christian based? And it isn't. And she was no longer interested in what we had to say. I
Even
found that so interesting in that what we have, even though it is not based in what this woman already believed to be true, could absolutely impact the quality of her experience of living.
including her experience of her faith.
Or her experience of being a football fan.
I said to her, our groups, our podcasts are really for everyone because as you're being here, it breathes life into all those things that are important to you, like your faith and your Christianity. But she had already stopped listening. So we encourage you today, as you are listening, to do that loving thing, which is to listen fully, regardless of the content and regardless of whether it applies to you and your already ongoing interests. Let's see where it leads us.
I like that.
Let's take our
Let's
first
see if it
guest.
leads us to our first guest.
It does. It really leads us to Tanya. Welcome to being here. Please tell people where you're zooming in from.
Hi, I'm zooming in from Oxford in England.
Awesome.
So lovely having you with us and fun to hear your voice.
Good to hear your voices too. I was going to say good to see you, but I can also see you.
Yes, we have
Well,
the
the
luxury of
wonders of
seeing
Zoom,
each other,
you know?
and but people get to listen to your lovely British accent. Hello.
I find myself, I hear my accent now more. Yeah, now I hear it more.
Well, that's okay.
I hope you love it as much as we do.
Yeah, I do. I do.
What can we do for you today?
I was feeling very moved as you were talking. You mentioned kind of forward thinking and wanting to fix things, and that there's an opportunity for a different way. And I wanted to talk about my relationship with my daughter that I can feel I'm a bit stirred up about.
How old is your daughter?
She's about to be 13.
Do you remember when you were about to be 13?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I do.
I remember when I was about 13. Maybe it's not the same for you, but I certainly at that time held my mom as the enemy. I don't believe she'd gone about living her life any differently than she had for the first 10, 11, 12 years. But there was something that switched on in my brain that had her become adversarial. And in my,
Well,
she was not, but
you know,
that was my perspective.
Yes, but I see a biological thing here,
Me too.
an evolutional thing, a zoological thing. You know, at a certain point, animals, say a bear, raises her cub or cubs, and at some point, she kicks them out when they reach puberty, when they reach an age where they can reproduce and go on and live their lives on their own. And I'm not sure that it isn't bred into humanity that at a certain age, children, as they start to become young adults, want to be free from the yoke of parental oversight.
Which we're not saying they're actually ready for that.
No.
But biologically speaking, they may be.
Yes, you know, because biologically speaking, a girl of 13 could easily become pregnant.
And then there's drive to go out and do those, what we would consider risk behaviors. What the biology says is let's procreate. So what are you finding yourself stirred up about in regards to your daughter?
I guess I feel like I'm giving myself a hard time because she doesn't really talk to me about how she's feeling about things anymore. And I can feel myself kind of pushing her, that I'm kind of pushing her, and it makes her even less wanting to talk to me.
You know, something interesting. We were taking a shower earlier, and Ariel said to me, she started reciting the lyrics of a Billy Joel song that was sung at our wedding 40 or so years ago.
I got really close to him and I said, don't go changing to try and please me. I never want you to work that hard. I'll take you just the way you are.
And see, that's the dilemma you are experiencing right now, in that you have an idea of how your daughter should relate to you.
Yeah, yeah.
And you want that idea to be fulfilled, but it isn't the way it is. It's the way you would prefer from your fantasy.
You know, uh, also, I noticed something about you with your daughter last summer. We had the really lovely opportunity. Shy and I were coming through Winnipeg
In
in
Canada,
Canada, and you were visiting your boyfriend, Dave. And you guys were kind enough to come to the airport for a brief period of time, and we all had a cup of coffee and had a sweet, and we sat there, down at the airport with your daughter, his daughter, and the four of us. And there came a point where they started speaking about books. And then they started going into their fantasy of books. And that wouldn't it be really cool if we could have a shopping spree for 5 minutes in a bookstore, and we could get all the books we wanted. What kind of books would you get? And they spun off into this whole fantasy of what books they would get and then which ones they would try to get extras of, and they could resell them on eBay. It was a total fantastical fantasy construct between two children's minds.
two adolescent children's mind who had all kinds of hormones that were shifting the way their bodies were.
And the way their minds were.
Yeah, it was like for years they were children. And all of a sudden, the biological clock hits time for these hormones to be secreted. And now they have drugs in their system.
But and now it's easy for me to come in from the outside, and I haven't been treated to this type of commentary and this type of energy for days and days and days together with them. However, I did notice something about your listening. There was a smile on your face, but there was, please excuse me, a hint of condescension. Like, aren't they cute? But cute was like a diminutive. So I have a suspicion that you want to listen to her, but you haven't found a way to consistently get excitedly interested or even just fully interested.
How about listen as equals? So you still hold that you have a superiority via age and experience to how she sees life. So you don't want to see life the way she sees life. You want her to see life the way you see life.
I was just fascinated at the workings of their minds and how incredibly elaborate and fantastical it was. And it was like creating a fairy tale that was fully scripted. And I was also so impressed that it wasn't like, I want gold. They wanted books. That was their goal. It was just fascinating and exciting. And I could lean in and talk to them. Of course, I love books. So I could lean in and talk to them about uh, stuff. And then I was asking, Dave's daughter, what do you like to read? And I got book recommendations from her because I like young adult fiction and I wanted to see what she was into. I love what Shia said, listening to her as an equal, as a partner. I suspect it will make you safer to share things with.
You listen through your agendas.
To make sure that she's a happy adult and not depressed and not bullied.
There was this interesting thing about this actress on television today who was went to jail for 2 weeks and had a $30,000 fine because she cheated on the entrance exams for college for her daughter.
And she said, all I kept thinking was, I wanted her to have a good future.
Right.
And in retrospect, I'm like devastated I did that, but I just kept thinking, I want her to have a great future.
Yeah, but you see, the future isn't. Now is. The future doesn't get here until it does, and it only gets here as a moment of now. So it's all an extension of what is, not what you prefer or think would be better.
Yeah.
Of course, as a mother, you want her to have a good future. But if you want that, the building block is to really be here with her now rather than trying to have it turn out some way.
That's right, because the picture you have of how it's going to turn out is not going to turn out that way. I mean, your mother did not expect you to have a daughter. No. Not this daughter. No. Not with the man that you had her with.
Yeah, that's very true.
So as much as your mother tried to manifest your future the way she would prefer, you did it your way. In fact, your way was in many ways in opposition to her way. So you give your daughter something to resist, she will resist it. If you allow her to be the way she is, she can see her own choices in her life, not as a reaction to your beliefs, not as a reaction to what you want for her, but she'll be able to see what she wants for her.
Yeah.
And you see, if I were you, I would trust her. Because you're an amazing lady, Tanya. And there's no reason that your daughter would fall from that tree.
I have one other around the age of 13 vignette story that might relate for you. I was in junior high and I was wrestling with the fact that there were a lot of kids around me beginning to experiment with drugs. And the drug of choice when I was an adolescent was speed. And there were lots of things on the news saying speed kills. If you take this, you could kill yourself. So it was like there was a campaign and there was a pressure to be cool and to experiment. And I remember I was wrestling with just the whole conversation and concept. And my great aunt Kaylee came in from Iowa and was staying with my grandma. And I only saw great aunt Kaylee a few times in my life. I loved her, but she was not a regular person, but she was a trusted adult. And I remember when my grandma left the room, I started telling Aunt Kaylee how this was bothering me and I was worried about it and I wasn't sure what to do about it. And what I recall is she had no solutions and she had no interest in doing anything about what I told her and doing anything with it. Now I'm sure she told my grandma, or they told my mom or whatever, but my mom was a committed advocate. If I had told her that, she would have marched right down to school and she would have done something about it. And so I couldn't trust her from my adolescent mind. So there, I do know you are a committed advocate for your daughter, as you should be. And you can develop the skill set
Of listening.
without doing anything with what's being said, and trusting her also.
Yeah, that is perfect. That is perfect. Because even there are examples where she started to tell me things, and I'm already like into or I could help with this or this, and it's yeah, then it doesn't go
Yeah,
well.
your automatic thing is to do something.
And to help. I mean, you even do that as a profession. Of course, it's your skill set. You're a helpful person. And the game is to hit that pause button and just
And
listen.
allow your universe to unfold as it does, not as you would prefer. That means you let your daughter say what she has to say, and you hear it, not to do something with it, but just to relieve her of that burden that she's carrying, which is not being able to deliver a communication that would free her to discover her next moment.
You could even ask questions. Do you want some help with that? She may say, no, I just wanted to, yeah, do you have any ideas? But I don't believe that you've given yourself license to simply be here rather than feel
Give
as
yourself the role of mother to operate through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about the listening as an equal.
Yeah, the other thing is this: you can't listen through an agenda to change her or get her to do what you want. I mean, you can, that's the way a lot of parents deal, but it doesn't support the child having trust in you.
I guarantee you, my great aunt Kaylee wasn't trying to convince me not to do drugs. I think she was so out of her depth that she probably just sat there and listened. That was exactly what I needed.
That's great.
Hey, thanks for being with us today. I really, really know you've done an incredible service to a whole swath of listeners, everyone, but particularly those with children.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now it's your turn. Let's hear what one of you listeners has to say about being here in the transformation community.
This is Sonja from Bad Eckenstedt in Germany. The thing I love about transformation and the radio show or the calls with Ariel and Shia Kane is that I'm really, really feel relaxed after them and feel more confident to go on with my life. I'm really glad and happy to have these opportunities in my life. So thank you very, very much.
Do you want to have well-being with consistency? Connect with people all over the world from the comfort of your own home at Ariel and Shia's lively interactive Living Made Easy virtual seminars. Join any of their 2-hour online events or take a deep dive into the magic of being you at a virtual weekend seminar. Come on, let's connect. Find out more and register at transformationmadeeasy.com.
Next Monday and Tuesday, we're doing 2 special magical relationships events. It's the regular Living Made Easy time slots, but the theme is magical relationships, and you're invited.
Valentine's Day is coming. It's in February, so we're going to do 2 events to support the possibility of having a magical relationship, magical love relationship.
I just flashed on something very funny.
What's that?
What if you look in the mirror at yourself and say, will I be my Valentine? What if you love you? And from there, it spills out to everything you touch and everything you do. There's that possibility.
See, if you don't love you, it makes it very difficult for somebody else to truly love you because they'd be some kind of fool.
We read an interview today with a famous actress who's now in her 80s talking about how much she hates her skin and how much she would not be willing to have anybody see her naked or be with her with the lights on. Shia is a contemporary of hers. I love looking at him.
I like looking at me. I mean, you know, I have no problem with my aging. It's part of my existence, you know?
So we invite you. We kind of went into a
Yeah,
They
a
call
little
it
cul-de-sac, but
but-
not bad.
yeah.
We're allowed, we're
Come
allowed.
discover new possibilities about magic in relationships. That's Monday the 5th and Tuesday the 6th. The 6th
Hey, you know,
is bilingual, German English. Yes.
that's the day before my birthday.
No. The day before is your birthday.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Oh,
That's what
the
I meant.
4th. Yes, yes. Shia will be 83 this week. Oof, handsome,
Oh,
sexy
my
guy that he is.
God, how did
Okay.
that happen?
The upcoming weekends are the Power of Listening. It's a virtual weekend, March 2nd and 3rd. Nothing more
And-
powerful than listening. Come join us.
Yes. And then, of course, we're doing Hamburg on April 18th.
It's the Freedom to Breathe.
And the 19th to the 21st is Simplicity.
Those are in person in Hamburg, Germany. And we're really, really excited to be going there.
And if you live in the States and want to come out to Hamburg, Germany, I'm sure we can arrange some sort of place for you to stay.
You know, shout out to our friend Zoe, who is a teacher and got a day off on the Friday of the last in-person course in Hamburg, flew out, did the course, and flew back to the New York area on Sunday night and had a brilliant week at school. She wanted to come. She wanted to be a part of it. She made it happen for herself. Admire that. So if you want to join us, you're welcome.
Whatever is possible if you want to. If you don't want to, nothing is possible.
By the way, been a while since we've talked about our newsletters. If you're not getting them, really recommend it. They have blogs, they have videos, they have incredible information and blogs from people just like you who've written about their experience of transformation. So you can find out about all of that at
Made easy.
transformation.com. All right, ready for our next guest?
I am Dave.
And guess where he is? Tell people where you are, Dave.
Hi, I am in Oxford in England.
You know what? We
Ah.
have a friend in Oxford,
Oxford
in
in
England.
England.
Maybe you could get together with her.
You know, I already have.
Awesome. And I suspect it was your daughter we were talking about, sitting with her daughter talking about books.
It was, yes. I am from Winnipeg, and so that's where we were.
Awesome. Nice to see you. Nice to hear you. What can we do for you?
Yeah, nice to see you too. I'm just really touched by listening, like, surprised at how powerful it is. I've learned to listen really by attending the seminars with you guys, and I see it transform, you know, all my relationships with my kids, in my business, with my girlfriend Tanya. It's just
With your dad?
with my dad.
How about with your ex-wife?
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth.
Well, I was waiting for it.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's really interesting in what you say is, see, transformation affects every area of your life. It's not selective.
That's change. Change identifies a problem and tries to affix a solution to it. Transformation, suddenly everywhere you look and everything you do has a quality to it
Of
that
newness
of
and
newness.
possibility rather than same old, same old.
Yeah, and that I hadn't thought about it that way before, how, it affects everything. And then suddenly when I listen and I hear something that I couldn't hear before, for example, I'm competitive, and I'm competitive in ways that have helped me, but I'm also competitive in ways that get in my way. And one of them is parenting. Like, I want to be the better parent.
Ah, yes.
And that came up recently, and I, from my perspective, I was doing the right thing. I was correct. I was, doing what was best for my kid, but it was in competition with my ex-wife, which
I see that is one interpretation.
But you see, you are used to being hard on yourself. So your interpretations are hard on you as well. So it's not that you're just seeing something objectively, you're seeing it through your belief structure, which includes self-flagellation. You know what I mean by that? Where you beat on yourself for what you perceive you did wrong or you should have done differently.
yes.
Well, I see it at least possibly slightly differently, Dave. I look at Shai and I, and we're really synchronized. And sometimes it gets bumpy, and when it gets bumpy, it's shocking that it's bumpy. So we look to see
What happened
that we're not running in sync. You and your ex-wife came from very different cultures, and you found a way to mesh. And now you're apart from each other long enough, and she has a new husband, and not particularly new, they've been together for some time. So your culture becomes a discrete unit, their culture becomes a discrete unit. From your culture, you are right. From their culture, they're right. So you can either say, I want to compete to be the best parent, but maybe you just stopped listening. Because in the act of listening, you discover what works.
You also discover what is from the other person's point of view without disagreeing with it as it's showing up. You actually are there hearing it as it is from their point of view rather than agreeing or disagreeing in your thoughts when you're truly listening.
Parenting is a creative act. And I'm getting a very strange example, but I'm going to use it anyway. I do a lot of visual artistic things. And one of the things that we do is we'll do cards that, like our business cards, our being here cards. And I often have a really distinct picture of what it should look like. And I love it when my designer presents me with exactly what I ask for, and then also says, here's just some other ideas to mix it up. What happens is sometimes I love what I came up with. Other times I'm so excited by something new that I never came up with, but it's not as if she's presenting me with, here's your stupid idea. Don't you like this one better? Somewhere in there is, similarly to what we were saying.
So what Ariel's
Tanya,
saying is you're judging your ex-wife's point of view as not as valid as yours.
it's similar to how she was listening to her daughter, you don't listen to your ex as a
Equals.
partner, as equals. And in fact, you may want to find a term that isn't ex-wife for her.
Yeah, like use her name or something.
Right.
And make sure you don't use her name like a curse word.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Thank you.
It's very easy to go, well, Shia, or well, Shia,
Yeah.
or
The
okay,
first one sounded a
Ariel,
lot like my mother-in-law.
used to say.
Yes.
So even mother-in-law. But Jerry ultimately loved him. But there were times where she could say his name.
But I had to give up being right. You see, I had to give it up, not her. When I gave up fighting with her, the fight was over.
Yeah.
And I believe the same thing is true for you and your ex-wife.
Give us her first
But-
name. Come on.
Jody.
Jody.
Yeah. Well, I believe it's the same thing is true for you and Jody, and that you were hurt with the separation and you haven't forgiven her as though she caused you that pain, rather than you hurt yourself with her choice in life.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
I'm really clear that Jody loves your kids and wants the best for them.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure you always appreciate the sacrifices she makes. The sacrifices of when they're living with her, what it takes to parent them every day.
And when
this
they're not living with them,
her, living with the loneliness or the loss of not having them. Either way,
Yeah.
she has this incredible investment in these young people who you both love.
That is so true. In my being right or whatever about the situation, I don't just not consider that. I disregard those things.
well, of course. And you see, when you say in my being right or whatever, no, it's not or whatever. It's in your being right, period. And when you're being right, there's always a downside of your experience of love and loving. To say nothing of your ability to communicate fully is lost. When your sense of well-being gets lost, because being right is very costly in those areas.
I have an idea, and this is, it's not fully fleshed, and I could be really wrong here, but I have to say it. What is her husband's first name?
Colin.
Did you say Colin?
Colin, yes.
I guarantee you, when you're fighting with her, it's like he's on the other side of a wall. What his opinions don't matter. I'd be really shocked if he ever said, what does Colin think about this? How does he feel would be really good to do? Like, it's like the idea to include him as having a say. I'm not sure you should. That's why I say I could be totally wrong, but just the idea, it's almost as if he doesn't exist in that household and you're fighting only with Jody.
Yeah.
He's that interloper and they're not his kids. He doesn't get a say, except for that they live in his home and he helps clothe and feed them, and she's not always there, and he's there with them when she's out doing whatever, and he is the babysitter in that, and he's the parental unit and all those other things, but he doesn't get a say because they're your kids.
Yeah. Well, and you're right on that, because there are times when I do consider that he's there, but most of the time it doesn't occur to me to
Well, he's there as an irritant for you.
Yeah.
I remember.
Is that a yes?
That's
Because this is video with us, but it's an audio going out to the people who listen to being here.
yes.
I remember back pre-transformation for Shia and I, when Shia's kids were younger, and his ex-wife had an idea of certain aspects of parenting that she felt Shia should follow. So she called up and spoke to Shia and tried to pressure him into moving back to California
I
because
was living in New York at the time.
because she thought it would be a good idea for the kids. And it may have been, it may not have been, but I found it so offensive that even though we were married, she was trying to get him to do what she wanted rather than talk to both of us, because it would have been a hugely uprooting life change for the two of us,
Especially
particularly
for Ariel,
since
because she
I
was in television
at that time.
at that time, right, in New York.
So it didn't take into account anything having to do with me. And I understand it. Like we were talking to Tanya earlier, she was a committed advocate for her kids. And I know you are too. I know Jody is also, but you can expand to include all of the loving people in your kids' lives and include them, because it'll be so much better for you, for your kids, for everyone, if you don't pretend Colin doesn't exist and he's just, as Shia mentioned, an irritant.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of that might not have been easy to hear,
Yeah,
because you want to see yourself as above holding somebody as an irritant.
yeah, and I want to see this all as handled, and and so when it comes up and it's not handled, I think should have this handled by now.
You know, it's interesting. I have a elder sister, Mary, and she's divorced and remarried, and her ex-husband is divorced clearly and remarried. And as time went on, they became really, really good friends, the four of them. So they'd go to their kids' football games together and they'd do things together. And all the other parents are like, are you kidding? How's this possible? Part of it, I believe, came from admitting that they were so far happier where they were, rather than to continue on with a relationship that didn't work for either one of them, so they could stop punishing each other for leaving and start celebrating what they did have now, which was two kids between them that they really adored.
It's very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Treat being with you today, Dave.
I'm with you.
And I again, while this has kind of gone into a parenting conversation, and I really, I'm appreciating it.
But it all comes down to treating your children or your lover, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, husband, wife, as an equal, not as some lesser being.
I want to go back to something Shia said to you, Dave, because the conversation we had was wide-ranging and somewhat complex. It was pretty much back at the beginning, and if we'd stopped there, it would have been enough, actually. He talked about your relationship with you and how you tend to be really hard on yourself and be, I don't recall the term you used, like self-flagellating or like beating on yourself. It's part of your background.
Did I say penitente?
Well, if you didn't, it's where you do penance for being a bad person just
Even
by
if
being
you-
alive.
Exactly.
You're a bad person. It's part of that very early Christian indoctrination. And if you circle back around to being kind to yourself, everything else follows.
That's so true and so cool. And lately I've been seeing how quickly that self-flagellation happens. It's like a visceral reaction. It just happens.
Well, Maybe it's an automatic behavior that you, by becoming aware of it without making yourself wrong for it, can allow it to lose its energy.
Yeah.
So it dissolves in the seeing of it rather than the resisting it, because the resisting it keeps it in place. The seeing of it is enough for it to dissolve.
That's so cool. When I see it, I know I don't have to do anything with it. And it does. It just, sometimes it sits in my body for a second or two, or maybe a minute, depending how strong it is. And then it just relaxes and I relax and I get on to whatever it was I needed to.
We've been watching Ted Lasso on Apple TV from the very beginning episodes.
Again, we decided to watch it over.
And one of the things that I find, not everything about that show is so wonderful as far as I'm concerned. But one thing that he said or was said in there was that a goldfish has about a 10-second attention span or retention span. And if you could let go of those things you disagree with in 10 seconds, your life would become miraculous. You get lost in the complaint about the things you don't like, and you hold on to it like a dog on a bone.
It's true. It's so good. And I thank you guys for, showing me that as a possibility, because in my experience, I wouldn't have ever got there on my own.
But what you miss is that you got yourself to a seminar on your own.
Yeah, see, somebody,
You were
a friend
invited.
of yours told you about us, but you had to do the work.
And not only that, it was different then. In the old days, pre-COVID, you wanted to do a weekend seminar with us, you had to fly into New York, and you did it. And you didn't know what you were getting yourself into, and you went for it. And so the person you really have to thank for it
Is you.
And you can just look in the mirror and go, don't go changing to try and please me. I'll take you just the way you are.
That's very touching. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being with us today.
Yes, thank you.
If you haven't yet subscribed to this podcast, please do and share it with your friends. And you can also go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't. You can find all our courses and the newsletter sign up link at transformationmadeeasy.com. Next week's episode,
letting those around you shine.
We'll be back next week.
So come on back.
And don't miss being here.